Joining me now from our studio are actors Woody Harrelson and Ben Foster and director Oren Moverman. They're in Washington this week for a screening of their new film, The Messenger, which opens the 11th of November. It explores the torment of soldiers who must tell family members that a loved one has died in combat. Woody, I want to start with you. You said this is the movie you're the proudest of. Why is that?
Well, because I think it's not only a great movie, and it showcases Ben in one of the finest performances I've seen on film, as well as an incredible new director who's phenomenal. I also think it's an important movie. It's a powerful movie. It leaves people at the end of it thinking about the consequences of going to war. And although it's not really, doesn't really have a political objective, the film, at least it shows that, and people, a lot of people have generated some dialogue about it,
Oren, I want to ask you, we know what the movie is about, but tell me about the sort of the emotional center of this movie. What's at the heart of it?
At the heart of it are the families and the people who live, as Woody said, with the consequences of war, and we wanted to shine a light on them and bring them into the conversation, especially now when we're talking about Afghanistan, the escalation, more dead in 1 month since we started the conflict. And so we just basically wanted to do our little thing, bringing the families, the soldiers who are returning. They're not, for some reason, entering the conversation, the strategic conversation about the war. And we have to remember there are people who are living with the consequences of it. And we have only 2 million people in uniform in this country, and they've become a subculture. They've been marginalized, and I think they feel isolated and not part of the conversation. So we just wanted to do our little bit.
Ben, tell me what it's like preparing for a role like this. How do you do that?
Well, we took a field trip to Walter Reed and spent time in the amputee ward, and that was very sobering. And as we've been discussing, anybody who lives in D.C. who hasn't been to Walter Reed should go there and thank our soldiers and just see up close the results of war, rather than talk about it in a very cold way. Statistics, numbers, see it on a human level. What's happening to our country?
Right. Is there anything about the grieving process for those who are left behind, though, that you discovered in this, in terms of the families who are alive, who've lost a loved one, about how they react to this?
You want to take that?
Sure. Our film concentrates on casualty notification, so we actually see the moment the news gets to the door. And obviously it's a traumatic moment, and it runs the gamut. There are all kinds of reactions, just like all of us would react to any news of losing a loved one. There is a process in the Army, obviously, after the casualty notification officers leave, a casualty assistance officer comes into the family, starts helping out and making sure that they get all the benefits and all the things that come their way, having lost a soldier. Then it's wide open. Then it's really a beginning of a new life. It's the thing they dread the most, obviously, the knock on the door, and they have to deal with it and navigate a huge bureaucracy and sort of get back to life. And our film, in a small way, is about that. It's about how do you get back to life after having suffered the pain and the consequences of war. And our answer is on a very basic level. It's about love and friendship and humor and finding hope and optimism and being thankful for being alive.
Woody, the president went to Dover Air Force Base this week to be a part of and witness the ceremony of remains returning from Afghanistan. Other than telling the president to go to see this movie on the 13th of November, what would you tell him about, based on your experience now with this film?
Well, I don't think it's up to me to tell the president anything, but I think it's important that he's weighing the escalation so heavily. He's obviously not casual with his decision, and I'd love to see them de-escalate and get out of Vietnam, or rather, well, there's a lot of parallels, but to get out of Iraq and Afghanistan, because I really don't think we have any justification for being there. But the fact that he cares about it enough to do something unprecedented, like be there in Dover, is huge.
Can I add to that something?
Sure.
I really respect the president for doing it. We all do, and I think it's a really great first step. What he did in Dover, as powerful as it is ceremonial. It's you see the coffins, you see the flags. It's very respectful and it's very powerful. If we don't start seeing the images of the guys, more than 35,000 wounded over there who have lifelong injuries. You know, if I don't get to talk to the president, a few of us do, but if I was to say to him something was, you know, let's, and say to you guys also, let's start getting the cameras on the families. Let's start getting cameras of those who want to talk, and the guys who are coming back. Let's listen to them, and let's start getting that story out, because that's a buried part of the conversation and shouldn't be that way.
Ben, you mentioned going to Walter Reed. What were the spirits of the soldiers there like? I mean, what was that, you know, the ones who've lived but who've got to deal with the injuries and so forth?
Positive, but that's also the soldier's way. Yeah. They've been trained to be soldiers, and just because they've come home missing pieces doesn't mean that they don't have that same kind of integrity. Politically speaking, they don't necessarily agree or disagree, depends on who you talk to, but they'd much rather, there's a sense of guilt of not being able to be out there and protecting their brothers. Mm-hmm. There's an embarrassment.
Without exception, they want to go back. They would like to go back into combat because they want to be with their friends, and they think what they're doing is important. You know, it's amazing, amazing.
Oren, final question to you is, what's the reaction been from the military to the film?
It's been very strong. The movie was actually fully supported by the military. They gave us technical advice. They gave us a technical advisor by the name of Paul Seiner, who was a godsend, who was really helping us every day. So far, we've had a lot of soldiers watch it, different generations. Vietnam guys react very strongly to it. They've embraced the movie completely. Guys who are serving now, it's hard for them to watch it, but they're very grateful for us doing it.
Were you going to add something to that?
Well, I just wanted to say one last thing, because it sounds like it's a bit of a downer, but this is a very up movie. At the end of it, you feel hopeful and uplifted, so I don't want people to be afraid of going to the theater because they're going to be depressed for 2 hours.
And we explain why that is, where that comes from, where the uplift comes from.
Well, I mean, you go through something so intensely emotional when you go through what's going on with these, you know, grieving families, but it's really a love story, you know. He falls in love with this widow of one of the people he notifies, and as well as it's us coming to love each other, and we have kind of a lot to get through just in terms of you know, screening people out and being very stoic, both of us, our characters. And so, you know, that's why it's uplifting, because, I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, I totally agree. It's about, you know, getting back to life and finding friendship and love and the powerful things that we all need, no matter where we are.
And the film goes through the path of grief and uplift that the families go through.
And you know, comic relief, because it's necessary in life. And these guys use humor to get through some terrible situations. So do we.
All right, that's great. Thanks, gentlemen. The movie is The Messenger. Opens on the 13th in Washington first.
And New York.
And New York. Great. Thanks very much.
Thanks for having us.